Why your brain was trained to stay broke. You get a raise, not a tiny one. Enough that you actually notice the difference in your paycheck. And for a moment, you think, finally, this is where things change. You're going to save more. You're going to stop worrying every time a bill hits. Maybe you'll finally build that emergency fund. Maybe you'll invest. Maybe you'll stop feeling like you're constantly trying to catch up. But something strange happens. 3 months later, you're making more money. And somehow you still feel broke. Your bank account doesn't look dramatically different. You're still waiting for payday. You're still wondering where the money went. And the weirdest part is you can't point to one ridiculous purchase that caused it. The money just disappeared. So you tell yourself the obvious story. I need more discipline. I need a better budget. I need to stop wasting money. But what if that isn't the whole problem? 1. What if part of your financial behavior was being programmed long before you ever had money of your own? Because your first lessons about money probably didn't come from a finance class. They came from watching, listening, feeling. You watched what happened when bills arrived. You noticed the tension when somebody mentioned money. You heard things like, "We can't afford that. Money doesn't grow on trees. Rich people are greedy. You have to work yourself to death to make money. That kind of life isn't for people like us." Maybe nobody sat you down and said, "Here is how you should think about money." They didn't have to. Your brain was taking notes. Because when you're a child, you don't just learn what your family says. You learn what your family considers normal. Maybe normal meant money arrives and disappears. Maybe normal meant payday feels good for 2 days and stressful for the next 12. Maybe normal meant adults arguing over bills. Maybe normal meant never having enough. Or maybe money was never discussed at all. 2. It was this mysterious thing everyone worried about but nobody explained. And years later, you become an adult. You get your own paycheck, your own bank account, your own choices. But you may still be operating inside rules you never consciously chose. And this is where things get strange. Because human beings don't only chase what is good for us, we are incredibly attracted to what feels familiar. Familiarity can feel safe, even when the familiar thing is hurting you. Think about someone who is used to having almost nothing left in their checking account before. Payday. They hate it. They complain about it. They desperately want to escape it. Then suddenly they start earning more. For the first time, they have extra money sitting in the account. $500, then $1,000, then $2,000. You would think that would automatically feel amazing. But sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes having money you're not spending feels strangely uncomfortable. Not because you consciously want to be broke, but because this situation is unfamiliar. 3. So the mind begins finding reasons. I've been working hard. I deserve something. My phone is getting old. I should probably upgrade the car. We should eat somewhere nice. It's only $40, and none of these decisions looks catastrophic on its own. That's what makes this so difficult to see. Because financial self-sabotage rarely looks like someone standing in front of a mirror saying, "Today I will destroy my finances." It usually looks reasonable, one decision at a time, until the bank balance returns to a level that somehow feels familiar. This may explain something millions of people experience. Why does earning more often fail to create the freedom we expected? You make $3,000 a month and somehow need almost all of it. Then you start making $4,000. And strangely, life starts costing almost $4,000, then $5,000, then $6,000. The apartment gets better. The car gets nicer. Conveniences multiply. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. 4. The first time you order food instead of cooking, it feels like a treat. Do it often enough, and cooking starts to feel like deprivation. The first time you buy the expensive version, it feels luxurious. A year later, the cheaper version somehow feels unacceptable. Nothing about the cheaper product changed. You did. Your definition of normal moved. And once normal moves, your money has to move with it. But spending isn't always about lifestyle. Sometimes it's doing a completely different job. Imagine you've had an awful week. Your boss annoyed you. You're exhausted. You feel underappreciated. Then you see something you want. Maybe it's shoes, a new gadget, dinner somewhere nice. You tell yourself, I deserve this. And maybe you do. But watch what just happened. Money stopped being money. It became medicine. For a few minutes, the purchase gives you something your week didn't. 5. Excitement, control, reward, relief. The object isn't always the real thing you're buying. Sometimes you're buying a feeling. And that creates a brutal advantage for spending. Because saving gives you almost nothing emotionally right now. You move $300 into savings. No package arrives, nobody compliments you. There's no dopamine notification saying, congratulations, you did not spend money today. Your future self benefits. But your future self isn't standing in front of you. The purchase is. And your brain has a problem. It cares a lot about now, especially when now is stressful. That's why people often make very different financial decisions when they're calm compared to when they're exhausted, lonely, anxious, or angry. The spreadsheet might say, save the money. Your nervous system says, make me feel better. 6. And guess which one speaks louder at 11 o'clock at night? But there's an even deeper layer. Because sometimes having more money doesn't only change your lifestyle, it changes your identity. Imagine growing up around people who constantly struggled financially. Then you start doing well. Really well. Suddenly you can afford things people around you cannot. You can travel, you can save, you can invest. And that should feel like pure success. But it can create something unexpected. Distance. You may start worrying that people think you've changed. You may feel guilty talking about money. You may downplay your success. And then, quietly, almost invisibly, you start spending to close the gap. You pick up the tab. You send the gift. You don't mention the investment account. You spend money proving you're still the same person. Because humans have spent thousands of years depending on their group for survival. Standing too far apart can feel dangerous. So even when nobody is consciously pressuring you, part of you may be asking, 7. If I become too different, will I still belong here? And now the title of this video becomes a little clearer. Your brain was not trained to stay broke by some person deliberately teaching you to fail. It was trained through repetition, through observation, through emotion, through what you saw rewarded and what you saw feared, through what your environment taught you was normal. And once a pattern becomes normal, you stop seeing it as a pattern. You just call it life. That's why two people can earn exactly the same amount of money and experience it completely differently. One receives a bonus and thinks, I can finally increase my investments. Another receives the same bonus and immediately thinks, what can I buy? Neither thought feels like a decision. It feels obvious. And that word matters. Obvious. Because the most powerful beliefs are often the ones you don't realize are beliefs. They just feel like reality. I'm terrible with money. I'll start saving when I earn more. There's no point saving such a small amount. 8. I could never afford a house. People with money had advantages I didn't. Some of these may contain truth. But repeat any story long enough, and your brain starts using it to predict what happens next. Then you begin noticing evidence that supports the story, and ignoring evidence that threatens it. Eventually, your financial identity starts behaving like a script, and you keep playing the character. So how do you change it? The obvious answer is budget harder, cut everything, become more disciplined. But that's why so many financial resets last about 3 weeks. Because you changed the behavior without changing what keeps producing the behavior. A better question is not, why do I keep spending? Ask, what usually happens right before I spend money I didn't plan to spend? Was I bored, stressed, paid, Lonely? Celebrating? Trying to reward myself? 9. And instead of asking, why can't I save? Ask something stranger. What happens inside me when money starts accumulating? Do I immediately begin thinking about what it could buy? Does having unused money feel wasteful? Do I suddenly remember 10 things I need? That question can reveal more than 100 budgeting apps, because the goal isn't simply to stop spending. The goal is to notice the moment an old financial pattern tries to recreate itself. Then do something that feels almost too simple. Don't obey it immediately. Let the money sit, not forever, just long enough for your brain to discover something new. Nothing bad happened. The money stayed there. You didn't need to upgrade anything. You didn't need to prove anything. You didn't stop enjoying life. You simply created a new experience. And with enough repetition, the unfamiliar starts becoming familiar. Having a cushion becomes normal. Investing becomes normal. Waiting before purchasing becomes normal. 10. Seeing money in your account without immediately assigning it a job becomes normal. And eventually, something strange happens. The financial life that once felt impossible starts feeling ordinary. Because maybe wealth isn't only about learning how to make more money. Maybe part of it is learning how to tolerate having more money without unconsciously rebuilding the conditions you already know. Remember that person at the beginning? They got the raise. They promised themselves everything would change, and months later they were right back where they started. Maybe the extra money didn't mysteriously disappear. Maybe their old normal simply expanded until it absorbed it. And if that's true, then getting ahead requires more than increasing the number on your paycheck. You have to change the number your brain considers normal. And I'm curious about something. Have you ever started earning more money and only to realize a few months later that your life somehow became more expensive too? Tell me in the comments what changed. Because I think a lot more people have experienced this than realize it. And in the next video, we're going even deeper into another strange thing your brain does. Why it can. Stay on high alert even after the danger is gone. But for now, remember this. You got the raise. You promised yourself everything would change. Maybe the first thing that needed to change was what your brain considered normal.